The enigmatic decline and subsequent abandonment of Chichen Itza as a major political and economic power center in the northern Maya lowlands represents one of the most compelling and intensively studied puzzles in Mesoamerican archaeology. An event traditionally dated to the late 12th or early 13th century CE, marking a pivotal transition from the terminal Classic, Vidal's early post-Classic period, into the subsequent late post-Classic era of Yucatecan history. To fully grasp the nature of this collapse, one must first recognize the city's extraordinary preceding phase of dominance, characterized by a unique syncretism of architectural and iconographic styles, blending the indigenous Puuc architectural tradition of the Yucatan with distinct and profound influences emanating from central Mexico, particularly those linked to the Toltec capital of Tula, and associated groups often referred to collectively as the Itza or the Cocomitza in later historical accounts. This fusion is most dramatically embodied in structures such as the monumental El Castillo, Pyramid of Kukulkan, the Temple of the Warriors with its extensive colonnades, and the vast Great Ball Court, all of which heavily feature the motif of the feathered serpent god Kukulkan, the Maya equivalent of the central Mexican Quetzalcoatl, and the recurring imagery of the Atlantean figures and shakmuls, undeniable markers of Mexicanization that had not been present in the earlier classic Maya centers. This hybrid cultural structure suggests that Chichen Itza was governed by a multi-ethnic or cosmopolitan elite whose authority was likely derived from a mixture of military prowess, control over vital trade networks, and a unique religious ideology centered on Kukulkan, contrasting sharply with the divine kingship, Kuhul Ejo model of the classic period. The political organization appears to have been more corporate or collective, perhaps involving councils of lineage heads, Ahawab, which, while promoting stability during its zenith, potentially harbored internal fault lines that would later contribute to its fragmentation. The prevailing ethno-historical sources, primarily the books of Chilam Balam, such as the Chumayel and Tizimin texts, and the 16th century observations of Bishop Diego de Landa in his Relación de las Cosas de Yucatán, offer a largely militaristic narrative for the city's downfall, asserting that the city's preeminence was forcefully ended by the machinations of the competing elite lineage, the Kokam, who were based at the rising power center of Mayapan. These chronicles speak of the dissolution of a powerful but inherently unstable political confederacy, often termed the League of Mayapan, a supposedly tripartite alliance between Chichen Itza, Mayapan, and possibly Uxmal, or another major Puuc center, and the subsequent outbreak of warfare. The Kokam of Mayapan are explicitly accused of hiring mercenaries, often identified as Akanul, literally guardians or protectors, or other non-Yucatecan groups, to attack and defeat the Itza rulers of Chichen Itza, culminating in the city's loss of sovereignty and the subsequent shift of political hegemony to Mayapan, with the symbolic date of 1221 CE frequently cited as the approximate time of this decisive conflict. A date now largely accepted by archaeologists as the point at which monumental construction ceased, though the exact nature of the event remains debated. Archaeological investigations at the site lend credence to this military interpretation, revealing specific evidence indicative of a violent terminal phase, most notably the discovery of burnt layers and traces of widespread fire within key civic structures and elite residential zones, suggesting a targeted attack and destruction associated with a conquest event. Furthermore, architectural analysis shows that while the great building projects abruptly halted, some of the very last structures erected display signs of hasty, inferior construction and spoliation of older materials, pointing to a period of political turbulence, resource scarcity, and a sudden change in priorities or leadership prior to the final collapse. However, the evidence is not uniformly distributed throughout the vast site, suggesting that the violence was perhaps focused specifically on the administrative and ceremonial core associated with the ruling Itza elite, rather than resulting in the complete destruction and immediate abandonment of the entire urban area. This leads to the critical modern understanding that the decline was less a single, sudden catastrophe and more a protracted process of political decentralization and economic erosion. The rise of Mayapan was intrinsically linked to its ability to consolidate control over the remaining population centers, instituting a highly centralized fortified capital, characterized by a much more militarized political ideology than that of Chichen Itza, which according to ethnohistorical sources maintained its dominance by forcibly relocating and effectively holding hostage the regional rulers within its walls. The most telling historical consequence of the fall of Chichen Itza is the exodus of the Itza lineage itself. Chroniclers document that after their defeat, the Itza migrated southward, eventually resettling in the remote Petén lowlands of modern-day Guatemala, where they established the new capital of Tayasal on an island in Lake Chichen Itza. This city famously resisted Spanish conquest for over 150 years, finally falling in 1697 CE, the last independent Maya kingdom to be subdued, serving as a powerful historical testament to the physical expulsion and survival of Chichen Itza's displaced elite. Beyond military and political rivalries, the socio-ideological and environmental factors provide a deeper, underlying context for the city's vulnerability. Chichen Itza's immense wealth was founded upon its control of vital salt trade routes, its access to the coast, and most uniquely, its function as the principal sacred pilgrimage center for the northern Yucatan, particularly involving ritual sacrifices and offerings into the sacred cenote. The continued discovery of gold, copper, jade, and other precious materials in the cenote, some of which post-date the city's political collapse, indicates that Chichen Itza retained its religious significance long after it lost its political power, transitioning into a vast ceremonial ghost town, visited by pilgrims but no longer housing a functioning government. This transition suggests a distinction between the political collapse of the Itza elite and the spiritual survival of the site itself. The ideological hypothesis posits that the power of the Kukulkan-centric, potentially more priestly elite, was challenged by a more radical, militaristic, and sacrificial cult, possibly driven by newly arrived groups or a dissatisfied indigenous faction. This ideological schism could have weakened the social cohesion of the city, making it ripe for internal power struggles or susceptible to a challenge from an external, ideologically distinct power like Mayapan. Furthermore, recent paleoclimatic studies emphasize the potential role of drought in destabilizing the region. Unlike the river-rich southern lowlands, the karst geology of the northern Yucatan makes it critically dependent on rainfall and groundwater access via cenotes. Prolonged and severe periods of drought, which geological evidence suggests occurred regionally during the 11th through 13th centuries, would have severely stressed the city's ability to sustain its large population and centralized administration, leading to agricultural failure, famine, social stratification collapse, and mass migration, thereby priming the city for the decisive military strike by Mayapan. Thus, the most comprehensive understanding of the fall of Chichen Itza embraces a syncretic model. The city's unique, possibly fractured multi-ethnic elite created a weak point, economic decline due to shifting trade routes or internal resource stress, exacerbated by drought, weakened its political resilience. And finally, the military aggression of Mayapan, fueled by regional power competition and perhaps an ideological shift toward a more centralized authoritarian model, delivered the final blow, leading to the Itza diaspora and the establishment of the highly centralized walled city of Mayapan as the new regional hegemon, effectively ushering in the late post-classic era of the Maya. The enduring ruins of Chichen Itza, therefore, represent the final, dramatic casualty of a complex interplay between political competition, environmental vulnerability, and profound cultural change.